This is Sedge Meadow, which feeds Moses Creek in Stevens Point, Wisconsin. Moses Creek recently underwent a major wetland mitigation project in order to replace wetlands destroyed by the creation of the new Interstate 10. In the past, the area was drained with the use of ditches, so the land could be farmed. As the town grew bigger, the creek was confined to smaller areas until it eventually tied into the city's storm sewer. The project area, which is located in Schmeeckley Reserve, is part of the University of Wisconsin's Stevens Point campus. One of the drawbacks of having Moses Creek contained in a drainage ditch was the loss of natural stream meandering, which slows the rate of flow of the creek. It also restricted the amount of wetlands that the stream could go through in order to reduce the amount of pollutants that got carried downstream. Another problem was the lack of wetlands to provide suitable habitat to the native species that once depended on the area. In order to correct this, about 10 acres of Schmeeckley Reserve was selectively cleared of trees, leaving only small islands in the project area. The next step of the project was to excavate the area to create areas for the stream to meander and wetlands to be able to form. To do this, topsoil was removed, the substrate beneath was lowered several feet, and then the topsoil was brought back in and applied to support the growth of original and newly introduced locally native plants. A series of new boardwalks were then built to allow the community to enjoy the future wetland area and to see how the species that will soon live in these areas are established. The following is an interview with Ron Zimmerman, the director of Schmeeckley Reserve. How much will this project help reduce the chance of flooding with regards to water storage capacity?
It'll have quite a substantial impact on the flooding that we have seen in the area. It actually is a pretty big area. It's 17 acres of wetland that's been created, and Moses Creek is going to meander through that wetland. So we've actually excavated about 4,500 dump truck loads of subsoil. So the organic soil was removed, the sand substrate was taken out, and then the topsoil was put back down again. So it's the original topsoil that was there. And the reason we've had to create this big floodplain is that as the subdivisions have grown around Moses Creek, we can no longer allow it to flood over the banks that it once did, prior to it being put into a ditch in the 1930s. The capacity is actually pretty great. It's 15 million gallons of water that can be retained in that area that we excavated. That's roughly 23 Olympic-sized swimming pools, so a lot of water.
How will affecting the wildlife habitat influence the species diversity?
Well, right now, what we've done is we've recreated the wetland community, which was really lacking in that part of the reserve. It's a different kind of wetland community than we have in other places. It's more of a sedge meadow or a marsh community that we've created. We've tried to create diversity in the topography of the landscape in this wetland. So we have some little scrapes, or what we're calling them from an engineering perspective, but they're essentially little shallow ponds within the wetland. So they'll retain water for longer periods of time. So we expect to have a lot more reptiles and amphibians and reproduction in these little pools. In addition, much more diversity of plant species, because we planted dozens and dozens of different species of rushes, grasses, and trees in this wetland community. So we're going to expect to see a lot of things you associate with wetlands. We probably have shorebirds that'll be on some of the mud flats coming this spring as they migrate through. We'll have mink probably as regular residents of the area, muskrat in all probability. We probably will see otter moving up and down the stream into the lake. So it could be a pretty exciting wetland community.
How much will this project better the quality of the creek?
Well, it's going to improve the ecology of the creek quite a bit, because what we have prior to the project was a ditch. In the 1930s, during the Great Depression, there were a lot of programs to drain wetlands to increase agricultural production. They tried to do that here with Moses Creek, to drain water out of wet fields and so forth. And essentially what happened was the soil was so poor that most of the farms eventually closed out, and it just became cutover land. So for the last 70 years, trees have been growing in this rather wet forest area. They don't get very big because they tend to be wind thrown. So what we have today is a creek that's now out of the ditch again and it's free flowing, so it can meander, it can create its own course through this 17-acre wetland that we've created. So it should be much improved water quality. Wetlands work just like kidneys in mammals, and so of course it's purifying the water, so the water that flows through the reserve will be more pure than the water that comes into it.
How will the success of this project be determined?
Well, I guess in multiple ways. A lot of the feedback is coming back now from our users, so people that are walking the boardwalk, the half-mile boardwalk through the area, are giving us real positive feedback about their recreational experience. I would expect that when it greens up in the spring of the year, we'll continue to get that feedback, and we'll start measuring success by the plants that come up and by the wildlife that moves back into the area. Expect to see increased numbers of species.
How successful is a mitigation project in restoring wetlands and compared to wetlands that are destroyed?
There's a lot of variability. It's really a continuum. Some projects can be very successful, but it depends on the quality of the wetland that has been destroyed, and it depends on the quality of the wetland that's created. In this case, we had a rather marginal natural area with Moses Creek as it had been channelized and so forth. So we were pretty sure that anything we ended up with was going to be a lot better than what we started with. Some of the wetlands that were mitigated, well, we don't know exactly what acreage ours might have replaced, so we don't really have a measure of what that quality is. But very frequently, a mitigation project doesn't turn out as a high-quality wetland. There's a lot of variables because these are living systems, and you can never be certain if you can replicate what nature has created over a long period of time.
There is no doubt that this type of mitigation project has definitely influenced the area for the better. It can also do so for many areas in Wisconsin that have experienced similar loss of wetlands. The benefits of this project have already been noticed when heavy rains caused flooding during the construction of the project, and the area was able to store very large amounts of water and minimize the amount of flooding that took place. It is obvious that this project has and will do many beneficial things to promote species diversity, reduce flooding, increase the quality of the water in Moses Creek, and restore a wetland area that will provide an abundance of habitat for many Wisconsin wetland species.